Greetings, Poe fans. Welcome to another edition of Poe Unplugged. I am Carmen Bolden.
And I am Jeannie Smith, and we are
The Poetastic Two.
Come zoom with us into the Unbook Club dedicated to the works of Mr. Edgar Allan Poe.
Good evening, Poe friends, and we are going to go ahead and get started tonight talking about Annabel Lee. But first, we want to welcome our very special guest, Trisha Shufelt. And she is a poet, author, artist, and her work is amazing. I'm going to hold up her book. I just got to finish reading it this morning, and she is amazing. So welcome, Trisha.
Thank you. Thank you. What an introduction. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So do you want to tell us? Yeah. Oh, thank you. Would you like to tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a self-taught artist, author, independently published, although I do have a tarot deck called the Poe Tarot, published through Schiffer Publishing. And let's see, I've been at this a long time. Just with artwork. I've been a professional artist since 2004.
Oh, wow.
And I really started just publishing my poetry books just the last couple years, but I've got about, I think, 5 of them out there.
Okay,
now.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. So, you know, and mostly gothic poetry, dark poetry, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
My kind of poetry.
Yes, I think that's everybody here loves that. All right. Does anyone have any questions for Trisha before we get started talking about Annabel Lee? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So,
you wet? Knock it off with the all right.
Oh, yeah. I have a tick of all right, and I've been trying to stop it because I'm not trying to be Matthew McConaughey. So
yeah. I'm trying to break her the habit.
Yes. So, Annabel Lee, what is everyone's thoughts? Anybody want to start the conversation?
Well, so romantic. It's such a romantic poem. And I was saying to you before, it sounds somewhat cliche to say it's my favorite out of, you know, all the poems that Poe wrote, but it just, I think it spoke to me because of the musicality of it, and it's just so beautifully written. And of course, tragic and sad, and
Yes.
you know, which he's did so well. But,
yes,
absolutely.
But I think it was probably one of the first poems that I read that truly spoke to me. You know, I remember reading The Raven long ago in school, but I kind of found Annabel Lee on my own and just fell in love with it.
Yeah, I read it a lot later than The Raven as well, and it's become one of my favorites. And the more poems that I read from Poe, I kind of change out different ones at different times. And I was going to say, Virginia, I got to do the tour with Levi on Sunday, and he read from one of the quotes, and before he was like getting to the end, and I was like, "Ulaloom," and he goes, "Yes," and so that's become another favorite of mine, you know, even more than Annabel Lee. But yeah,
that's my favorite. So
okay.
Ulaloom. I mean,
I love it.
I've read that in the Poe house.
Oh. That's amazing.
Nice.
My infamous birthday party.
Oh, yes.
I read that as everyone was going to sleep that night.
Oh, that's cool.
That's the best dreams they could have.
Oh, yeah. But I think one of the things about Annabel Lee that I love too, it's just the Kingdom by the Sea, and just thinking about being on so many different beaches and just thinking about that poem and just feeling the, you know, the wind and smelling like the salty air and everything. It just kind of, that resonates with me too, the romanticism of it as well.
Yes.
I think the most romantic thing about the poem is probably the end, that even though she's lost and she's, you know, buried at the sea in her tomb, he's still laying there just happy because he still gets to have dreams, like laying by her tomb, happy because he can still have dreams of her. And even
Yes.
that is better than not having her at all. And I know it
Yes.
sounds really weird, but I mean, I'm married, my husband's next to me, but is he gonna be staying there in my grave crying when I'm gone? Probably not. The idea that there's some man out there who, you know what I mean, he loves her so much. I mean, it's what I mean, at least I hope to have one day. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah,
just
every
such
night
a,
I lay down by the side of my bride, and it just,
yeah. I
it's
mean,
like, oh,
Yeah.
could you imagine having someone who loved you that much, like in your
Yeah.
life? Really, I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know. As sad as it is, it's kind of like it kind of sets that standard for, like, like like in the poem, like we love with the love more than love, you know, like.
Yes.
Yeah, you definitely did, because I'm like 40 and I haven't even had a little piece of that. I love you though, honey.
I was gonna say that particular line,
That's over here.
the line you just said, Holly, that we loved with a love that was more than love. I included that in my wedding vows to Jeff, and I intertwined a whole lot of different things that, I loved, and there was some Star Trek in there, and the Vulcan, but because we both like that. Yes, it was, and she was there.
Yeah.
She was there. But yeah, again, it's like that unconditional love, and yeah, it's like how many people do have that? Yeah, that someone is going to lay down by, the grave and born like that.
And you say though, like men, they always, I've heard this, I don't know how true it is, that like a woman can't die of a broken heart, but a man can.
Oh, interesting.
That is so wrong in so many ways.
Yeah, and then
because like I mean, I don't know, I kind of feel sorry, this is gonna sound a little, we're the tougher sex, you know what I mean? So
right,
I feel
right.
the idea that, like, as a woman, like, I feel like we couldn't just lay there and just give up on life and just lay there all day. But the idea that this man he's gonna spend the rest of his life there by the sea. I mean, it's kind of, again, it's a romantic notion. It's kind of,
absolutely.
Kind of sexy.
And the aspect of it also, I think, is the male and the female aspects of love. Because if you take back, and I'm going to go historical here, going back to mythological, if you want to really go back, because you have to think of it, the women that are the epitome of what love was Aphrodite, those types of females, that they were considered the only ones who were able to love, because the male was always about providing for the home or protection or anything. So a lot of people don't really view, men as being able to have that much of emotion, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
But they can.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They're very quiet about it, and they internalize it a lot more than in some aspects, because sometimes women are more open about their emotions.
Well, it's interesting because it's funny. My husband, I've been married to now 28 years. He's a Scorpio, and he's very emotional, like very deep, where I'm an air sign. I tend to be in my head. I'm like, disconnected in that respect, but he can be very, that loving, romantic kind of aspect, which is it's there.
It's rare.
They're out there.
Yeah,
I'm just a Scorpio.
Yeah, I'm a Scorpio too. I'm like textbook Scorpio, so absolutely. I mean, we're obsessive. Yeah, we really are.
Yeah, and well, it also brings me back to my dad. And when my mom died, he just lost it. And he was a Leo, and so he never showed any kind of emotion. It was, and plus it was all about his old-fashioned ways, the way he was raised, and how you could not, you weren't supposed to be seen as weak, and you couldn't show a lot of emotion. But it's like something broke in him when my mom died. And I remember the first thing he asked me after she died, he goes, "What am I going to do now?" Because they had been together 45 years.
Wow.
If she had lived 2 more weeks, they would have celebrated their 45th anniversary. So it was just so heartbreaking. And, that's the thing. And when I think about, and I'm going to really go off the rails here with Annabel Lee, because every time I read it, I always think of Atlantis. It's really odd. I know, but I'm odd anyway, if most of you people know me. But I think of Atlantis, about how the disappearance of Atlantis and how it just dropped off into the sea. But there's still some people searching for it, because it's like this mythological love affair that everybody is trying to find. And to me, that's what it feels like when I read Annabel Lee.
I can see that.
It's like Poe, even laying on the sepulcher, is still trying to strive to find that. And that because the angels in heaven were jealous, that they made her disappear. But yet they're still not happy, because while he's still there, he's still hanging on to her, because he hangs on to what they had.
Right.
That love, that even though they took her, they did not take his love.
Right.
And I think of that when I think of Atlantis, and I think of, it fell into the sea, and like what Will said on his chat about him living by the seaside, being drawn to the poems and the stories of that setting, because it's all about this ebb and flow and the depths of the ocean that no one's ever reached or know about, what exactly is still there. And that reminds me of love in its essence, because you don't know how deep that love really goes.
Yeah.
And you just made me think of something when I was kind of brushing up on Annabel Lee. I found something that said there are a lot of, obviously there's a lot of talk about who inspired it, but also one of the things I found that was really interesting was that some say it was based on a local legend of a sailor who fell in love with a woman named Annabel Lee, who died of yellow fever. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of something similar to that. It wasn't a sailor, but there, like in Sullivan's Island, Charleston area, where Poe was at for while in his time during the Army, there was a family there, the Ravenels, Raven E.L. And the father was, I think he was a preacher, and that's Jeannie's weird ringtone. But he had a daughter, and her name was Anna. And their local legend, they really, some people really believe this to be true, that Poe would come into town, and this particular man, he also was, I think, like some type of scientist or something. I can't remember all the things, but Poe really loved his daughter, but they didn't want Poe around her, because Poe was not, worthy of her. And so the legend goes that she died young, and the father buried her in this cemetery. And my husband and I actually went there, in an unmarked grave. And but there's no definitive proof that it really even happened. But they say that Annabel Lee was possibly written for this lady. But again, I did some research and could not find any facts on that.
Yeah, I know about. Once you started talking about that, Carmen, I have heard that.
Okay.
And I've actually listened to a couple of different podcasts about it, because I was like, WT, what is this? And I started researching it more, and I'm like, but I had heard the stories like prior to that, and I'm like, but first of all, he supposedly buried her in the unmarked grave because he did not want Eddie to find where she was.
Yes.
But then again, it's like, but there's no record. So did this girl actually even exist? Was this just somebody trying to, because from what I understand, this was not something that was even known about until after his death. So it's like, is this real? Or is this just made up because they're trying to get some kind of oh, we have something to do with Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah,
More
to
than
jump
him
on
just
the
being
stationed there. Yes, yes.
Right,
or
exactly.
is it just coincidental that someone found this after his death, and it's just like
kind of trying to put two and two together? So I would say, Trisha, that kind of that to me, it sounds very similar. Those two things.
Gotcha.
Definitely.
Okay.
What year, Trisha, if I may, what year on your research does that say that was supposedly, or?
I have no idea.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. I don't really know.
Well, the reason I was asking is because I know during the yellow fever outbreak in Memphis, right next to the Mississippi River, there was a lot of kind of those types of stories that were coming out of it, because it was one, yellow fever was one of the major epics that took place in Memphis that knocked out a lot of their population in the early 1800s, before the Civil War. So in that area. So that's what I was just curious, is maybe something along those lines, because as much as everybody else does, there's a lot of lore and mythological instances when it comes to sea and traveling and sea shanties and that kind of thing. So like my Bonnie, I love that song, but where did it exactly come from?
I don't know.
Yeah, see, it's weird, but
yeah. And then we were talking briefly before everybody came on with Trisha about, I was saying that I got to teach Annabel Lee this year in our unit about star-crossed lovers compared to Romeo and Juliet. And I had my students write about a very short essay on who was more star-crossed. Was it Romeo and Juliet, or was it Annabel Lee and the Speaker? And so the kids, some of them took it upon themselves to say, well, the Speaker is Poe and Annabel Lee is his wife. And so, because of course I added all kinds of history, they're like, stop talking about Poe some days. And so they're joking with me. They actually really like it. And so
some of them probably not, because they're teenagers.
Well, true. I get the eye roll. And but it was very fascinating to see them take that step up and do that, and some of the kind of the things that they came up with, and I would say it was probably more really chose Romeo and Juliet, but a large chunk thought that Poe and Virginia were more star-crossed, just because of it. They know these are real people. This really happened. And so it was fascinating to see how they analyzed this. And so there's hope for the youth.
Well, part of that is too, like in Romeo and Juliet too, it's fate, right? So I like that how in the poem, Poe plays with the idea that, God and the angels, maybe they're not so quote unquote good or merciful, that they're not as happy as we like to think of them. He makes that comparison about, the angels and heaven and the demons. So it's kind of, I think, interesting, like everybody was kind of plotting against him and toy with the idea of maybe the afterworld isn't such a, a great,
and how the angels and the demons were kind of, I think he kind of connected the two, almost being one and the same. And then, of course, the highborn kingsman that kept her, carried her away. They were all plotting sort of against him, like you said. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think the whole legend in South Carolina with the highborn kinsman, thinking about the family, that was the family taking her away from him. And I think that's a lot of the other connection with that story too, of pulling them apart, maybe. So,
well, I don't know if anybody heard when Levi and I were covering this, we touch on Annabel Lee quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because of all oh no, she's Annabel Lee. No, she's Annabel Lee. I mean, I would love to think that I am Annabel Lee, but I don't think I am. But we and the more I read and the more I analyze this poem and the more I look at letters and history and, correspondence, et cetera, the more I look at it, and Levi tends to, like, we tend to agree with each other on this. We really believe that this was Elmira.
Okay. Yes.
We believe it was Elmira that he's writing about, because this poem, if everyone remembers, this poem was published a week before their wedding. That didn't end up happening. And the highborn kinsman.
I was a child and she was a child.
And she was a child, yes. She was his first and she was his last.
Yes.
So that does make absolute sense. Yeah.
It does. No, I agree.
I mean, like I said, I would love to say I am Annabel Lee, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of there. It's kind of there. I mean, it's neat to think about, like, you know, the supposed girl that, you know, now haunts the cemetery in, you know, in South Carolina might be Annabel Lee, but when you really look, I mean, makes for a cool ghost story.
Oh, it does. But, it totally does.
You know, but when you're looking at it and really, like, if you want to just take it, like, you know, he's very artistically saying these things, but at the same time, and that's my other argument too, is if this was supposed to be a poem about Virginia, why would he write this poem to go with, actually, no, I'm sorry, it was to go with their engagement announcement in the newspaper. So it's like, why would he write a poem about his late wife
to go with
when he's about to announce that he's engaged? You know,
that makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah, I've never thought that it was definitely written about this legend in South Carolina. It's just an interesting, you know, process. But Will says, I wondered if highborn kinsman was literal or just his bitter perception of them taking his love away. That's a good point.
I think it's both, because I mean, he had a hate relationship for Alan. And you know,
sure.
And then at the same time, there was like all these workings around him that was working against him. So it wasn't just the highborn kinsman, it was everything in life too, his age, his, you know, and I agree with Virginia on some instances that we all know that there's been so many different poems and stories of talking about first love being your last love, because it is still your first and, you know, true love that's in your heart, for not for everybody, but for the most part. So very much it could be in that being young and being told, you know, you can't do something, or you're not young, you're not old enough to make a decision when it comes to that. And that they were just like star-crossed lovers. And their families was like, too bad, too sad.
And then Holly kind of also added, I think that is the casket being taken away. And yes,
like that classic. I mean, I know it was big in the Christmas Carol, that illusion that they would say in like Victorian times of that the casket with the black horses, and that you could see it, and it was like the sign of the death. So I mean, I know it's not highborn, but I kind of always thought of it, since they had the play with the angels and the demons, that it was more of like not literal, but kind of like an aerial interpretation of it. Like they're coming with their black horses and they're taking her and they're like, you know, bringing her away. I mean, for me, I don't know, it's kind of what my mind went to when I envisioned the words. I kind of just saw like the black horses, the casket, and all that.
No, I think that's a really good point, because it's that literal definition of what that means. And I mean, that I think that's a very, I can picture that in my head, definitely.
Yeah, and the guessing about what actually killed her, I've always attributed it to tuberculosis or some sort of lung disease, because of the way he describes how the wind blew in and how most things in the air, killing and killing my Annabel Lee. So it could be a mixture, because a lot of contagion, because tuberculosis was extremely contagious, and then pneumonia especially.
With Holly added that too.
I mean, of course, tuberculosis, if you know, it's easy to, like, for me, like Virginia, we know, died of tuberculosis, and I mean, Yeah, I guess I just associated the story with ammonia, though. But I mean,
not you, Virginia. You're still here.
Yes.
Yeah,
am I here?
Yeah, we see you. You're still here.
Yes.
You're not a glowing form of anything.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Because
especially because ammonia is a silent, deadly killer. It kills very young, very quickly.
Yeah.
When tuberculosis tends to be a drawn out disease, which is not pretty and painful. Like seriously, like you can get ammonia and like you could seriously die tomorrow. I mean, it's kind of like a crazy like. I mean, but again, open interpretation. I guess kind of always associated with pneumonia.
Yeah.
Well, in that day and age, also, it could have been anything. Because they didn't have any type of antibiotics, they didn't have any type of thing that combats the bacterial infection. So
that's true.
It could have started as tuberculosis and developed into pneumonia, or started as pneumonia, developed into tuberculosis, or it was a mixture of two. Who knows? But
and with tuberculosis, how that works. See our very first episode of our podcast for all that information. But it's very true. But it does slowly eat you away, and that's why sometimes it is hard to determine it unless you're doing a blood test. You know, if it is tuberculosis, because it can affect various other organs in the body and cause other things to start happening, and then you're, you know, getting treated for those things and not for the root cause.
Yeah.
That is very
which
true.
They didn't have treatment for back then. And it would be like, from that time, it would be like another 40 years before they had the first antibiotics.
Yeah.
And the bad thing about anything with the lung disease is because the blood transfer from the lungs only goes to the heart. Because that's the only way, you know, it's not in the main circulatory system. It's in just its own section. It's the heart feeds the lung feeds the heart. They don't go anywhere else. So if the lungs are getting diseased and it's in the blood in the lungs, it's feeding it to the heart. And then from the heart, it's getting fed into the rest of the body.
Yes.
So that's why it's so difficult when lung diseases happen.
Yeah.
If you don't catch them early enough, then it can slowly eat the rest of the body. Because the heart will just say, hey, all right, you're here. I'm going to send you out. Goodbye. But the one thing I would say about Trisha, your poem in the book from basically Annabel Lee's point of view.
Dearest.
Yeah, Dearest. It resonated so well because every time I've read the poem, it's like, you know, I wonder whether if she, you know, even if she's dead, is she still there? I mean, because
they're hiding away from Liz.
Exactly. No matter where she is, in heaven or hell, you know, whatever it may be, is she still feeling the same things as he is by her sepulcher? And she's watching and feeling the same thing and going, you know, I still love you. I still think about you. I wish I was there. So, you know.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful poem, and I mean, if you want to,
I was going to say, if you want to share that, this would be the perfect moment.
Sure, I can do that. I have it right here.
It is so beautiful.
Yeah, the book is gorgeous. I love the Gothic black and white, and I love the half profile picture because when I saw that, it made me think she's half in and half out of death.
Yeah,
you know, so it was very, it was very. Resonating with that also. So
it's beautiful.
If you would like, please.
Thank you. Sure. I can read it for you. Okay. Dearest, ribbons of moonlight curtain tenebrous twilight with memories of an evanescent sea, and youthful places time endeavors to erase for us, but never my love for thee. For as the moon ever beams and brings me sweet dreams of our shoreline walks together, the angels above, who envied our love, chilled our stolen kisses forever. But neither last bated breath, nor my sepulchre in death, will dissever my soul from the soul of thee. I am forever your bride, in eternity's night tide, your beloved Annabel Lee.
Yes, thank you. Love it. Yes.
That was beautiful. Very beautiful.
Yeah, I loved it when I read that
I
one.
almost imagined her penning a letter to him that would never be delivered. That's kind of how I wrote it, as if she were sitting up there or somewhere, just writing to him and trying to express how much she still loved him, and that she felt the same way, but this was a letter he would never see, you know.
Yeah, and putting it to thinking about being by the sea, the message in the bottle, that most,
Yes.
most people that are sending messages in a bottle and sending them out to sea, there's only what, 1 in a billion chance of it getting to, anywhere to be found. So that to me was part of what I was thinking of when I was reading it, and it was resounding to where, most people, when you lose somebody, you want to think about what they're going through, or even if they're still on the other side, or if there is another side, or
how close they are on the other side.
You're hoping that there is another life, or there is another existence, there is eternity after, that we aren't just going to drift off and never have that again. So okay, we lost you on your volume, Trisha. We lost your audio. Something happened. Can everybody hear us, or is it just her?
No,
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we hear you now. Say it again, Trisha. Say something. No, there you are.
We're good.
You're back.
Yeah, go ahead with what you were about to say.
Okay, that was strange. No, I was just gonna say, I've always believed that they hear us. The other side hears us. We don't hear them, obviously, but I kind of feel like they always hear us. So it's like it's all right to always talk to them, because the message will get through.
Yeah. I believe the same. I mean, I have to, in order to keep going. When you experience trauma or grief of any kind, you have to figure out ways for your own self to survive. And I think that's one of the ways is that I do believe they're over there, they're listening, and in some ways it's like the myth, the myth of the red cardinal, the messages from the other side, that when they show up, they are, messages. So I believe that. And
Jeannie and I were actually talking about that earlier today or yesterday. I can't remember. Just like little weird things when, like, you're looking for something that related to somebody that has passed that you loved in your family or whatever, and all of a sudden, like, you look later on and you find that, and it's like, is this a message or is it not?
It's something just wild, and it can be in hilarious ways also, Will.
Yes.
I've had those things happen to me. It'd be like, all right, tell us.
So several years ago, a guy I worked for died of a stroke at the age of 85. Wow. And he was a great guy, but he was also very cantankerous. And during the eulogy, one of his ex-girlfriends was giving a speech, and she made a joke that he would have found funny, but he would have acted kind of tough on too. And after she made that joke, the microphone turned off. And he would have done that. He probably would have gotten up and unplugged the thing if he were actually there in physical. But they got us all thinking wondering if he was there in the audience.
Well,
yes.
He's probably going, wait a minute, no, get that, no.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I watched this one video that somebody made. It was an Irishman. They had just entombed him, like put him in the ground, and he had recorded this message before he died that he had the priest or somebody in the family to start playing once his coffin got lowered, and it was him knocking, going, "Let me out!" Oh, gosh. What is happening?
That is very Poe-esque.
Yes. And it's like, that right there is, that is something that he wanted them to, not feel sadness, but to know that he was still there.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
And so, I watch it frequently too there, Will, because it is hilarious.
Yeah. It kind of going on with that. This is a print of a painting that I did about Annabel Lee, but right here I have like her spirit where, you know, he's laying down right here, and they're so close, but they cannot reach each other. And so I've always felt like, you know, again, it's just that star-crossed love. They were meant to be, but she got taken too soon, and he, you know, just again going back to that unconditional love, and he can't let it go. Neither can she, but in spirit, but he can't see her, he can't touch her or anything like that. And so it just, it's very bittersweet.
Yeah, and in the poetry, how he uses the terms of ebbing and flowing, that's what life is, and that's what love is.
Yeah.
Because sometimes love comes and love goes, but you know, it's very rare, like Holly was saying, it's very rare to find that one true connection.
Yeah.
And that one love like he's describing. And if you do find it, it's, you know, you got to hang on to it. You can't let it go.
Yeah. And I kind of think of my parents, but in the opposite way, because my father died when I was 10. And my mother, let's see, how old was she when he died? 43. And she only lived to about 2 weeks before her 59th birthday. And she never really dated after he died. It was like, my job is to take care of you. And once I know you're taken care of, I can move on. And I seriously believe she died of a broken heart, because it was, to me, it's a lot like this, just in, you know, male female reversal, because she died of leukemia, but she never could get over it. She missed my dad so much because they were so in love, because they were married right at 26 years when he passed. And so, but that always makes my kind of like you, and it's that connection.
Yeah. And I know for a fact that broken heart syndrome is a true medical diagnosis.
Yeah.
And it most of the time it can kill.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to recover from.
Yeah.
I unfortunately got diagnosed with it, and it was very hard. It was very hard to recover. But it truly was an eye-opening experience.
Yeah.
And, you know, anyone that has ever experienced any type of unconditional love, whether it be, you know, husband and wife, siblings, mother, daughters, you know, any type of unconditional love, you feel that, and it's soul binding, in my opinion. So, and that's what I get most of the time when I read Poe, is everything that he has to say, he's sharing a piece of his soul.
I agree.
Yeah.
So,
I really agree.
and I think that's why he has stood the test of time.
Yeah.
And has so much influence that he does.
Yeah. Well, because everyone can connect in some form or fashion with him because of that.
Yep. That's true.
Definitely.
So,
and if not to that undying love, to insanity or something.
Yes, exactly.
You know.
Yes. Well, you know, there is a fine line there. So most of the time, if the brain can't comprehend, it finds a way of fixing things.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. So,
all right. Any other thoughts from anybody?
Ideas or anything? And if anybody wants to get Trisha's book, is it on Amazon?
It is on Amazon. It can pretty much be ordered from anywhere, I think, online.
Okay.
But Amazon has it, yes.
Yeah. That's where I got my copy. Yes.
Yeah.
And
I love my hardback.
I know. I love it, that it is hardback. And again, you know, her words are absolutely beautiful, and the artwork is just, it's beautiful as well. Just, you know, I highly recommend. Let's see, Micah, I think it was Micah that said,
it's Micah.
In The Night of the Raven, the actress who recited the poem was Latina and recited half of it in Spanish.
Nice.
She became the narrator of the story herself. The Kingdom by the Sea became Mexico, which meant she was also longing for her home. Oh, that's beautiful. And Will said that's cool, Becca. Yeah, that is absolutely beautiful.
Well, it also could, going on a tragic Gothic side of this, most people that have terminal illnesses, and they have to find a way of dealing with that, will connect to something like that and start viewing the next step, or heaven, whatever, as their home, so they can have that connection and be able to survive for that time that they have with their mind and emotions intact, because it's very hard to face your own immortality.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
But that's why Annabel Lee is still resonating to many today.
Yes. I think it will until the end of time.
Whether it be for, I agree with Virginia that it is for Elmira.
Elmira.
Yeah.
Elmira.
I always want to call her Elvira, but that's like, no.
That's a completely different lady.
Yes.
Exactly. She was very Gothic, but yeah, different lady.
That might go to Poe's time traveling theory.
There you go, Elvira.
I was going to say Poe probably would have liked her too.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
She would fit with him, I think. So.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, moving on.
Yes. All right. Any other thoughts that you guys pulled out of the poem, or anything that you can think of?
Trisha, you told us before we started that you have a second book that you're going to read. Is it the same with additional poems, or?
It's I have the other book is called The Ghosts of Winterborn.
Okay.
It is not Poe related in the sense that I took some Poe's poems and short stories,
right,
and then I kind of did my take on it.
But
it does follow sort of the Gothic vein. It's very winter themed. There's a lot of reference to death and rebirth and that kind of thing. So it, I make mention of Poe in the foreword, that although it's not, doesn't directly relate like the first book, he's always in my mind. It's like he's always there, sort of influencing what I do next, and I kind of felt like that was the case with the Ghosts of Winterborn.
Cool.
Yeah,
that I'm going to order that one next.
And that one has that one actually has more photography in it than there's a couple pieces that are drawings that I did, and I some of the images, like in The Ghosts of Nevermore, they weren't my actual, like this piece here, with the floral stuff. This was I worked with a woman who was from the Gypsy Craftery, who let me use those images. I think it's called ephemera type.
I think I've heard of that. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but she does beautiful work. So I contacted her and asked her. I said, could I please, use a few of those images in there? And she let me do that, which was really kind of her. And so she also let me do that with The Ghosts of Winterborn. Let me use some of that. But this book has some of like my photography. I don't know if you can see this, but one.
Nice.
So but it's black and white, and has the photography in it with it that. So, but again, Gothic themed.
Yes. Well, Trisha, is there any other poem that you would like to read?
Wow. Does anybody have a request? Do you have a request? Because I know you just read the book. Is there one in particular
Well,
that you
and
really like?
Virginia, is everything okay?
Yeah, I'm gonna quietly move back inside my house. So I have two outdoor residents. I have a groundhog and I have a skunk. And
Oh, no.
outside. So I'm gonna just move in my
make a
house.
quick exit, yes, but don't,
Let me see. I'm getting to the table of contents because there were so many of these I loved.
You want me to pick the one at the end?
Oh yeah, Jeannie has a favorite too that.
Yeah, I read
because I remember we talked about this one.
Yeah, it was this one. It was the October Gives Birth.
Yes.
October Gives Birth. Okay, let me see if I can't find that one.
Page
I think that's in the
93.
That's in the others section. Okay, so this was the image that went with it.
Yes, that's the one.
Yes.
Okay. It's okay. October Gives Birth. With numb fingers and frozen toes, October dances a dirge of death to songs created by her crows, while winter watches with bated breath. Variegated leaves crush beneath her feet, chased by dusky twilight shadows. The queen of fairies she will greet with her book of lost tomorrows. She feeds on acorns, arsenic, and old lace, washing it down with herbal tea, while candlelight veils her aging face, lined with memories of what will never be. As her reign now ushers a somber close, she births a child with delight, whose frost blue lips recite winter prose of mother's wisdom to mortals in light.
Nice. I love it. Love it.
Yes.
I like that one because of the Arsenic and Old Lace.
Yes.
The movie Arsenic and Old Lace was one of my favorites. And plus fall of the year has always been my favorite.
Me too.
My favorite time of the year because watching the leaves change and just that death and then leading into rebirth. It's very much, it reminds me of, kind of like the crone that kind of gives way to the maiden, because when the spring comes and all that. So I enjoyed that one too, because I love.
I'm glad.
Matched to me to the one you wrote with Annabel Lee.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
you're welcome.
Trisha, thank you so much for being our special guest and sharing your poetry with us.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this was amazing. Next month, I think we said June 27th.
The last Tuesday of June.
Yes. We will be doing, this is one that I think it doesn't get as much.
Yeah, no. Accolades.
Yeah, credit, or it gets overlooked. It's understated, I guess. We're going to be doing Ligeia. And
yes.
And we are going to have another guest joining us, and his name is Jeff Thompson, and he is a retired professor from a local college here, Tennessee State University. Yes. He taught there, I think he taught there since 1985.
Right.
And English literature. We have not gotten to talk to him as much as we would like. We met him at a showing of Psycho.
Yeah.
And the owner of the theater, we started talking to him about our podcast. He goes, "Hold on a second. Do you mind if I invite somebody to come up and talk to us?" And we're like, "No, bring them on." And so we call him Dr. Jeff, but he's written several books on dark shadows and Dan Curtis. And so he said that.
I know Jeff.
Okay.
I know Jeff.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
Okay.
Dark Shadows festivals and so on. Yes, I know Jeff. Yeah.
Okay. And so we got to talking, and we've emailed several times. He sent us a copy of one of his books. I've started reading it, and then I'm gonna pass it on to Jeannie. But we picked Ligeia because there is a Dark Shadows episode that has a Ligeia connection. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's really excited. He's also going to be doing one of our normal episode about podcast for June as well. So he will be joining us for the Poe Unplugged at the end of the month.
Yay!
Yeah.
So, yeah,
that excites me very much.
Yeah,
very good.
Well, you definitely need to join us.
We're excited. Yes, we are meeting next month.
Yes.
June the 27th is the last Tuesday of the month at the same time. Same bat channel.
Yes. So. And we will definitely send everybody the link and, the day of the Poe Unplugged. So
I'm getting a little concerned with the computer. It's like I'm disappearing in the background.
I think it's the lighting because it's getting darker and
it's fading out.
Maybe you're becoming a ghost.
Yeah. I'm becoming a spirit. You see the spirit. Oh
my God, you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've had my husband here before smoking a cigar at the end of the table, but he's not here tonight, so it's not smoke.
Yeah, no. I think it's the ghost of Annabel Lee or Edgar here.
I think it is, or both.
They're hanging out here. So.
Yes, or both. Yes. So, definitely join us. We'll be putting that up on the website probably in the next couple days. And look forward to it. And this was so much fun tonight.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. And any last thoughts before we end?
Anything? All right.
All right.
See, I beat you to it that time.
You did.
See, she said it without me saying it.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay. Well, on that note, we are
Poe out. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, Trisha.
Bye.